The Shop 3 Sheep Eater. Written and read by W.P. Thrift, who can be contacted at Lantis Armstrong on Twitter. And cover art created by JD, contactable at Radix_L on Twitter. Chapter 13. Bowman Comes to Supper. It was later that night when Lantis, dead tired from a long day of racing, then training, then chores, collapsed halfway up the stairs leading to his bedroom. He rolled around onto his back and sat up on the stairs, where he held himself and shook. It had been a relatively long while since he had last found himself shaking in pain after a day of physical exertion. This pain was different, though. It wasn't aching to his very core, rendering him a living corpse, but rather merely a very deep soreness piercing through every muscle of his body. Having just finished putting a load of laundry in the dryer, after putting all the dishes in the dishwasher, Cassidy was heading to bed. Sure, this was making the clothes super wrinkled after sitting in the dryer all night, but they were mostly raised things, so she didn't care. She headed up the stairs while looking down, just thinking to herself. Glancing up and noticing Lantis, she froze. "Oh, didn't see you there," she said, wanting to make small talk, with nothing coming to mind. Lantis exhaled quickly, recomposed himself, and forced a smile. "Ah, hey! Well, good night then." He looked back down, shivering. "I know that it's been cooler out, but you look like you're freezing," Cassidy said. "Need a sweater or something? There's a closet downstairs where we keep all the winter stuff. I know one sweater my pa used to love that might fit you." No thank you, I'm not cold," Lantis replied, though he offered no other explanation. It wasn't needed. Cassidy had seen him at his worst. She knew this was how he got when he had a particularly rough day. It had been a while since she had last seen him like this, though. I gotcha," Cassidy said. "I'ma be pretty tired myself starting tomorrow." Lantis glanced up again. What happens tomorrow?" "I'ma start replacing the fence posts around the property. That's gonna take weeks to finish, too. I estimate about 3,000 posts are needed to replace in total," Cassidy said. "If you're doing this because a few of them are broken, then that's my fault." "Oh, nah. Mr. March told me about what happened, so I knew I was gonna have to patch it up. But while I was there, I realized how rotten the posts were inside. They're a good 15 years old now, and the weather's treated them all pretty badly. I didn't think they were built from the best lumber originally anyway, so I plan to replace them with something that'll hold up for a long time." "Huh. I've been checking them every day, and they seem fine to me." "Some problems you can't see on the surface. Sometimes the problems are much deeper, cutting right through the heart of something, ruining it, but making it seem pleasing on the outside." Lantis nodded, completely not understanding what she meant. "So, you have the posts already?" "Some of them, yeah. The rest will be arriving next week. Just don't have the room to store them all right now." "What's involved in this exactly?" Lantis asked. Cassidy took a seat on the steps and ran Lantis through the whole process, starting with pulling the staples out of the fence, then pulling up the board, using a hole digger to reshape the hole for the new post, planting it, and using a shovel to fill it in, before using a staple gun to reattach the fence. She liked having something to talk with him about, whatever it was, and this was a subject she felt more comfortable talking about than the stars the night before. Alas, there was only so much she had to say on the matter. "So, if you weren't going to use the truck to drive the posts around with, what other options are there?" If you're talking about doing this yourself, you could probably pull them all up onto a large rain tarp and drag them like you're carrying a large sack." Cassidy laughed at the idea, as her imagining him doing this was just funny to her. It was, however, only a joke. She never for a second thought that he would be serious about this. "Okay, I understand," Lantis replied. "Anyways, I should be heading to bed. It was real nice talking with you," Cassidy said, getting up and heading on to her room. Yeah, same," Lantis said, without much thought. After he heard the door to her room close, he got up and headed down the stairs and out of the house. His body was burning, but moving his muscles around actually felt better than just letting them sit still. His night vision was sharp, especially considering there was a full moon out. He spotted where she had stored the posts under a tent, just to the right of the barn, near where the peach trees started. Fetching the large rain tarp out of the storage from the barn, he returned and began tossing posts onto it until it had reached its capacity. Then Lantis folded the tarp up and began dragging it down the long dirt driveway like Santa carrying an oversized sack of toys. Cassidy's surprise at finding most of the posts gone the next morning was mitigated only by a momentary recollection of hers and Lantis's conversation the night before. But it seemed so far-fetched to her that even though he was outside right now training with Mr. March, she just didn't ask him. Instead, she ran off through the endless rows of peach trees, venturing nearly a mile out to the fence. The posts were all new, with the old posts laying on the ground beside them for her to drive along and pick up with her truck. She hadn't told Lantis what to do with the old posts, so this was clearly the best thing he could come up with on his own. She just didn't believe it. Nearly 1/6 of the entire fence had been replaced already. That was 500 posts replaced in a single night. There's no way! Did he even sleep? Cassidy mused. She had later asked him, and learned that he didn't sleep. He had worked on the posts all night until he went jogging with Ray the next morning, before he began to get in his exercises for the day. And at the time that Cassidy asked him about this, he was doing chores with Haley. Otherwise, Cassidy would have made some snide comment about Ray. But her sister was impressionable, and she never wanted to hear Haley talk about someone else the way she would talk about Ray. She wanted better for her sister than she had for herself. But there was still more work to be done, more fence to be replaced. But there still wasn't nearly enough work to do to wear her out as she was expecting to be worn out by the day's end. She finished up with the remaining posts and got back in time to start supper at its regular time. Lantis was showing signs of sleep deprivation by then, being very still and acting very stoically whenever he wasn't being directly addressed, or at least when he thought that nobody was looking. Strangely, he was not nodding off, just kind of mentally drifting off during these times. Cassidy wished she knew what was going on in his head. Why did he work so hard on that fence for her? Did she even dare wonder if it could have been some kind of grand display of affection? Right now, she wished that that was true more than anything. And just so long as she didn't ask him, it remained possible that it could very well be true. Then again, if it actually was true, and she was wasting time by beating around the bush and not just directly saying something, well, but then she thought, on the other hand, the moment he dismissed the idea of doing anything expressly as a show of love for her, that would be her world shattered. The fear of that pain was so great, the thought of asking him was paralyzing. "So, what are you thinking about?" Haley, of all people, directly asked him. It was very casual. Her sister didn't even know that Cassidy was listening from the kitchen. Lantis and Haley were sitting next to one another watching TV, along with all three Marches. Ray secretly resented Haley for sitting right next to Lantis, as Lantis always sat next to the arm of the couch. That prevented Ray from sliding in next to him casually, and then slowly inching closer. Stupid kid, Ray thought, frustrated. I've just been thinking about the same thing I've been thinking about for the past 3 months, Lantis said, honestly. Cassidy tensed up. What have you been thinking about all this time? Ray, too, was extremely interested in knowing how he would answer Haley. She kept her eyes on the TV, but they were out of focus now, concentrating with every ounce of her inner strength towards hearing what he had to say. Cassidy leaned her back against the wall, out of sight of anyone in the living room, and pressed her ear against the wall to make sure she would hear him clearly. I've just been worried, Lantis continued. I've been worried that you can't get a large fry and drink off the $5 menu at any fast food restaurant. I may have to settle for small side items. Cassidy immediately knocked over a frying pan sitting on a shelf next to her in the kitchen, which made Ray jump as well at the sudden clang as the pan hit the floor. You're weird, Haley told Lantis. 1 week later, at the 1st of October, Mr. March had pulled Lantis aside and let him know about a very special guest that was coming to visit them for supper. It was Bowman! Lantis didn't get the significance, but Mr. March insisted that the meeting of the two greatest heads of intelligence in the stealth espionage and assassination agency in the world was a major deal, and that it was far past time that they had such a meet, as a show of goodwill towards one another. "You may be in training under me, but he's still your boss," Mr. March said. "We may need to make certain that everything we've done meshes well with how the two of you do business, and how you've always done business before." "What, you mean that I'm not working for you?" Lantis was surprised. "Oh, goodness, no! Once we're done here, the missus and I will be going back to deep undercover. You may never see us again, in fact. But with your crazy life, who knows?" Mr. March elbowed him as though he had just made a funny joke. Lantis didn't get it. "We're not going to turn you loose back with Bowman just yet, though. We've got to squeeze in all the quality time out of you that we can get." As Bowman pulled up in his potato car, which he had pushed down the dirt driveway, as the moment he had turned onto the dirt road, his car hit an anthill that caused the engine to blow out. He wasn't alone in pushing the car, however, as Miranda had joined him on this venture. Mr. March was the first to come out and see him, greeting Miranda happily as well, as the two of them knew each other. "I hope you don't mind if I borrow your boyfriend right quick," Mrs. March said. "I have something important to tell him before everyone meets up." Miranda was too busy blushing over being called his boyfriend to be able to respond one way or the other. So Mrs. March went ahead and pulled Bowman aside. "We do have a second job for you," Mrs. March told him, taking on a very stern expression all of a sudden. Bowman had been playing Flappy Bird in the window screen of his goggles, but her words convinced him to close the program and actually listen to her. He was getting sick of dying in that game anyway. "This is related to the first job, so we can't offer you any additional payment, but it's extremely important. We just need your permission to use Lantis for it. I'm sorry to say, but that's all I can tell you for now. Very soon, when we make our move, we'll have someone contact you directly with more details."
"Oh, okay, that sounds fine."
Bowman just shrugged.
"So we've reached an understanding, then?"
Mrs. March wanted to make certain.
"Oh, yeah, I don't care either way. Business has been so slow that I've started staying at my parents' trailer most days again,"
Bowman confessed.
"Wish I hadn't, though. My little brother Dylan's being an asshole."
Mrs. March gave an understanding nod.
"Family can sometimes be a handful, but we must always love them no matter what, no?" "Oh, hell no! Have you ever met my brother? He makes my blood boil."
Bowman retorted strongly. They would just have to agree to disagree. Then they headed back towards the house, Miranda grabbing Bowman's arm to walk arm in arm with him inside. She played it off as though they were only doing it as a gag, but it drove her crazy when Bowman didn't react to her doing it one way or the other. Well, maybe he's just embarrassed. Maybe? Miranda could only guess. Or perhaps hope is a better word. "We're here," Miranda called out as soon as they entered, alerting everyone to their presence. Cassidy, already in the kitchen finishing up supper by putting a pan of piping hot casserole on the stove after taking it out of the oven, quickly took her oven mitts off to run and greet Miranda. Miranda quickly let go of Bowman so that she could run over and hug her friend, only to turn and see Ray emerge from the living room. "Ray, I'm so glad that you decided to come here after all. How are your parents?" Miranda asked while squeezing her, too. "Oh my gosh, I just realized. You two living together for so long? You must be the best of friends by now." She kept one hand on Ray while reaching over to grab Cassidy's shoulder with the other hand. "Wow, so you two should really see yourselves. Former rivals? Now friends for life? This is incredible!" Ray and Cassidy were both shooting hot daggers at each other from their eyes, wishing that the other would die. Miranda noticed this, and then gave an embarrassed laugh while letting go of them, realizing that they still didn't get along. and then they approached each other as though to attack. So Miranda quickly put herself back between them and held them both at arm's length. I think you left your oven on, Miranda said, as the oven was open and still burning red inside. That mercifully got at least one of them to walk off and preoccupy their mind for a moment. Miranda breathed a sigh of relief, and then Lantis came into the living room. Bowman! Lantis said happily.
There you've been! Mr. Never showing up for work anymore, huh? Oh, ha!
Bowman demanded, forgetting why Lantis hadn't been showing up. I got to see chickens! Lantis gave him the most important status update report first.
Oh, good. Pet the chickens, pet the chickens.
Bowman mused to himself. Say, Miranda saw, giving Lantis and Ray a coy smile. You two are looking close now. I guess coming here really did pay off after all, huh? Huh? She gave them a wink, and only then did the two of them realize that they were standing very close together, shoulders practically touching. Ray moved away quickly, and then regretted doing so sharply. Lantis had only huddled up at Miranda's suggestion, bowing his head down and blushing while twirling his thumbs together. Ray shot an angry glance over at Cassidy, which Miranda noticed and followed to its target. Oh, wait! Is Lantis and Cassidy an item then? Miranda asked, scratching her head. Ray trembled, while Cassidy blushed and Lantis began to back away, back into the living room. Observing this, Miranda suggested, or maybe I should stop talking, huh? Later, once everyone was sitting down at the table, food served and Cassidy just now sitting down, Bowman quickly got up and rushed over for a second, grabbing the rest of the casserole and returning to the table with it. Despite steam coming off of his hands from the hot glass burning him, he ravenously devoured it, having not had food this good ever. He had never had food this good, even once in his life before. Veterans at the table, meaning everyone except for Miranda and Ray, instantly recognized Bowman's eating habits as being identical to Lantis's when he first arrived. Well, not first, but once he was able to move under his own willpower again. Lantis had also eaten like this.
And here I thought you'd start eating better with the money we paid you,
Mr. March said, watching in amazement as Bowman shoved the food down his throat like a duck. Bowman pounded on his chest and downed half his sweet tea in a single gulp before saying,
I don't have any money. My goddamn pa found the check, and he went and he spent the whole $1 million on lottery tickets.
What? Mr. March was shocked. Did he win anything? Haley asked. Oh, from the innocent mouths of babes. Does that mean I don't get my $5 chicken McNugget meal? Lantis shot up to his feet. Once what Bowman had said had truly dawned on him. True horror was etched in his face. His eyebrows wrinkled together, his jaw slacked, and his cheeks sucked in. Is he joking? Cassidy asked Ray, but only out of surprise, and because they were sitting across the table from one another. Don't talk to me, Ray hissed back, quietly. Lantis slouched back down in his chair, too depressed to eat another bite. He didn't even want to live anymore. Oh, it's okay, Uncle Lantis, Haley told him, being the only person here at the table to feel the depth of the pain that he was in. We'll always have the chickens. We'll always have the chickens. A tear swelled up in Lantis's eye, and he reached up with a napkin to dab it away. Yeah, we will, won't we? Those wonderful, wonderful chickens, Lantis said quietly. Is, he always like this? Miranda whispered to Mrs. March, whom she was seated next to.
Always is,
Mrs. March confirmed. Otherwise, the meal went as well as could be expected. But before Bowman left with Miranda, Lantis managed to get his attention and get him to sneak outside with him. This time, Lantis made absolutely certain that he wasn't followed, as they arrived behind the barn, far out of view from any vantage point from the house.
If you're about to ask me about the internet at the shop, then no, we still haven't gotten around to putting it up yet,
Bowman said.
It needs a special outlet for high-speed internet. We used dial-up the last time, so the phone line is all we needed.
This isn't about that, Lantis hissed, peering around the corner to double-check that they weren't being followed.
"Goddamn dial-up."
Bowman fumed, still angry at how slow it was after all these years. "You do have your smokes on you, right?" Lantis asked, turning to him and pleading.
"Oh, well, of course,"
Bowman said, reaching into his pockets and bringing out a pack. Sparkles appeared around Lantis's eyes as his expression swelled into one of pure joy. "Please!" Lantis begged, without specifying what he meant. Bowman understood him, though, and handed him a cigarette. Lantis still had his lighter on him from when Cassidy had brought it to him that one night, and he quickly brought it out to light up the cig. The first surge of nicotine, after all this time, was incredible, immediately making him feel lightheaded. The cig also tasted different from what he recalled them tasting like before, mostly because his senses weren't dulled from smoking nonstop. Bowman lit up a smoke too, figuring they should have one together before he headed home. It was very peaceful for them, hiding out behind the barn and just enjoying a smoke. For Bowman, it had the added nostalgia of being back in high school. Having been a smoker since he was 14, he was always having to hide in the bathroom to huff down a cig between classes or during lunch period. He decided to share the story with Lantis. As to Bowman, there was a great meaning behind it. "Why in the bathroom? Couldn't people smell it out in the hallway?" Lantis asked.
"Oh, yeah, but that's why I had to hurry,"
Bowman replied.
"Besides, we couldn't smoke outside. The Nazi principal had guard towers etched all around the school, with snipers planted on them. Oh, ha! If any student went outside while the school was in session, they'd be gunned down. Of course, the snipers also were mistakenly told that no student should ever be permitted outside. We lost 4 whole football teams who were just going out to the practice field before Principal Black realized his mistake."
"Oh, I see," Lantis said, simply nodding. He fully believed the story. It really just didn't sound that unusual to him.
"Oh, what the hell! Here, have a new pack. It's on me,"
Bowman said, taking an unopened pack still in the plastic out from his pocket and handing it to Lantis. "For real?"
"It's the least I can do after I had to go back on the $5 fast food meal I promised you,"
Bowman said. "Oh, thank you!" Lantis said happily, and then he immediately stuck the pack of cigarettes in his mouth and forced it down his throat before swallowing it.
"Oh, what the hell did you do that for?"
Bowman barked at him, mortified to see good smoke suddenly go to waste. "The March has taught me a cool trick where I can swallow and regurgitate anything safely. It's super cool. They actually taught me a lot of cool tricks," Lantis informed him. "As long as the cigarettes stay wrapped in plastic, they won't be damaged."
"You could just cough them back up whenever." "Oh, ha!"
Bowman was surprised. Lantis nodded to the affirmative. "This way, nobody will ever find and take these from me, like they did the last pack." After they were done with their smokes, they stomped them out and headed back to the house. Bowman said his goodbyes while the Marches noticed the stink of smoke on Lantis, who quickly said that Bowman smokes and it just got on him. They both frowned, not believing him. Bowman and Miranda took off, and everyone else went back inside for the night. Even Lantis was able to sleep soundly for once. His long-time nicotine fit finally sated, at least for one night. But tomorrow was another day, and tomorrow night would be another round of insomnia. That concludes Chapter 13 of Sheep Eater. Tune in every Tuesday for new chapters, and please subscribe to be notified the moment they're released. If you would like to reach me, you can do so at Lantis Armstrong on Twitter. That's LANTISARMSTRONG. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope you'll join us again for next week's chapter, Austin's Lament.